Welcome to the Unknown Chronicles, where the veil between reality and the mysterious is razor thin. Together we'll journey into the darkest recesses of the human experience, where truth twists into terror and shadows whisper secrets. Prepare yourself to face the unexplained, the unsettling, and the unspeakable. The unknown is waiting. Let's step into the darkness. Today, we have our next story, coming from Eleanor of Raleigh, read by your host, Thorn Bloodrose. This story is called The Mirror. Hi, Thorn. Thank you for taking the time to read my story. I'm still not sure why I decided to tell it to you, but I guess if one day I disappeared, then the people will know why, and they can protect themselves. Somehow. The first time I dreamt of the mirror, I was 7 years old. It appeared in a void of darkness, primordial and imposing. Its surface cracked and clouded with age. Something moved behind the glass, a steady, eerie, desperate rhythm of silhouettes that seemed to echo in my chest. The air around me in the dream felt suffocating, like it carried a weight far greater than I could comprehend. The edges of the void were blurred, but I remember the mirror being starkly vivid, like a crude anchor in the darkness. I woke up screaming, my body drenched in sweat. My mother rushed into the room, pulling me into her arms. "Just a bad dream, sweetheart," she murmured, rocking me back and forth. But it didn't feel like a dream. I couldn't explain it at the time, but I knew there was something wrong, and it was very real. My mother's reassurances, soft as they were, felt hollowed against the fear that rooted itself deep within me. When I fell asleep the next night, it was there again. The same suffocating darkness, the same mirror looming in front of me. Only this time I heard murmurs, faint and incomprehensible, like voices tangled in a storm. I tried to turn away, to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I remained paralyzed, watching the cracks in the mirror stretch and pulse like veins. I woke up gasping, clawing at my blanket, my mother's concerned face hovering above me again, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her what I'd seen. The dreams didn't stop. They grew worse. I stopped sleeping through the night. My mother took me to doctors, therapists, anyone she thought could help. They said it was night terrors brought on by an overactive imagination or something I'd seen on TV. But none of their resolutions worked. No amount of soothing words or prescribed routines could keep the mirror from invading my nights. The older I got, the more vivid the dream became. By the time I was 10, the whispers had grown louder. The voices were clearer, but I still couldn't make out the words. The tone was pleading and desperate. I began to dread sleep. I'd sit up in bed, staring at the walls of my room and telling myself if I didn't close my eyes, the mirror confined me. But exhaustion always won, and the moment I drifted off, the void would swallow me whole. By the time I was 15, I could recite every detail of the mirror. The rococo brass frame tarnished with age, the jagged fractures running across the surface, the faint whispers emanating from its depths. I'd even grown accustomed to the rhythm of the silhouettes behind the glass, the way they ebbed and flowed like a tide of living darkness. The dreams had become a grim part of my reality, a second life I couldn't escape. I never dared to approach it in my dream, always waking up before I got too close. Some primal instinct told me that touching the mirror would be crossing a line I could never return from. That night, it followed me into the real world. I woke up with a start and my breath hitching in my throat. The whispers hadn't stopped. It echoed through my small bedroom, accompanied by the faint, raspy whispering of my name, Eleanor. I stilled, my heart hammering in my chest. The sound wasn't coming from the dream. It was here, in my room. The mirror was here. It stood at the foot of my bed, impossibly real, the cracks glistening in the faint moonlight streaming through my window. The surface rippled as if something behind it was pressing against the glass. "This isn't real," I whispered, squeezing my eyes shut. "This isn't real." The whispers grew louder. "Eleanor, come closer." Against every instinct, screaming at me to run. I opened my eyes. My body moved on its own, drawn towards the mirror by an invisible force. My bare foot touching the cold hardwood floor as I took a hesitant step forward. The glass shimmered, the surface rippling. A sliver of darkness appeared, deeper than anything I'd ever seen, and an icy wind rushed from the fractures. My breath fogged in the chill, and for a moment I thought I saw a pair of eyes gleaming in the darkness. "Eleanor, help us." The voice pleaded, clearer now. It was layered as though many voices spoke in unison. "We need you." I'm not sure what happened next. The next morning the mirror was gone, leaving me questioning my sanity. But the chill lingered, and my reflection in the mirror looked different. Sunken and haunted. When I reached for my backpack, a scrap of old parchment fell out, brittle and yellowed. On it was a crude drawing of the mirror, surrounded by strange symbols. I spent the next day in a haze, the whispers echoing faintly in my mind. I'm not sure how I ended up in the school's library, but somehow I had. I wandered over to a computer and started searching the internet, combing through forums and old stories of supernatural encounters. Everything pointed to one conclusion. The mirror was a trap. Something was waiting on the other side, and for some reason, it wanted me. That night, I prepared myself. If the mirror came again, I wouldn't run. I wouldn't ignore it. I couldn't ignore it any longer. Not with the whispers growing louder and the icy chill creeping into my waking hours. At midnight it appeared. The surface of the glass shimmered with unnatural light, and the voices, a chorus of the desperate, pleaded for my help. I approached, my hands trembling as I reached for the frame. I couldn't ignore the pull. "I'm here," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "What do you want?" The glass rippled, revealing a swirling abyss of shadow and light. The icy wind whipped around me, pulling me forward. I took one last breath and stepped through. I awoke in a vast, desolate landscape. The sky was a fractured mirror of stormy clouds, and the ground beneath my feet was slick with black water. The voices surrounded me stronger than ever. "You're here," the voices said, a predatory satisfaction dripping from their tone. "We've been waiting." The shadows coalesced in forms, vague and monstrous, their shapes constantly shifting, eyes, thousands of them gleaming in the darkness, and the air grew heavier with each passing moment. "What do you want from me?" I demanded, my voice trembling. A figure stepped forward, taller and more defined than the rest, its voice like stone grinding against stone. "To keep you, to feed. Your soul will sustain us for a long, long time." Panic surged through me. I turned to run, but the ground beneath me thickened into sludge, holding me in place. The creatures closed in, their limbs stretching and creeping towards me. "You'll never leave," they hissed. No one ever does. Desperation clawed at me, but deep in my chest a spark of defiance ignited. If they wanted my soul, they would have to fight for it. I clenched my fists, bracing myself for whatever came next. I didn't know if I could escape, but I wasn't going to surrender without a fight. I don't know how long I spent in that place. Months, years. I did look older when I returned. Time didn't work the same way there, though. But eventually I found a way to push against the creatures. They fed on fear, on desperation, and I learned to deny both. I focused on the fragments of strength I could muster, piecing together memories of my life I'd left behind. One night, or perhaps one moment in the timeless void, the mirror reappeared for me. This time it was cracked but shining, a faint light emanating from its surface. I saw my mother. She was sad, crying, and I knew it was for me, and my anger flared. The creatures recoiled as I stepped towards it, their whispers turning into shrieks of anger. "You can't leave there, Royd. You can't leave there, Royd. We need you." But I didn't stop. I reached out, pressing my hand against the rippling surface. The glass was cold, almost burning, but I didn't pull back. Instead, I pushed harder, willing myself to break through. The light within the mirror grew brighter, blinding the creatures that clawed and screamed around me. Their voices were deafening, but I focused on the warmth of the light, my mother's face, and the faint sensation of hope calling me home. The surface gave way and I tumbled through. I woke up gasping, my body tangled in bedsheets. An unfamiliar ceiling of a room loomed above me, a steady beeping drilling in my ears, and for a moment I thought it had all been another nightmare. But the faint scent of the void lingered, and my hands trembled at the memory of the creatures. As the days came and went, I realized the mirror was gone, not just from the foot of my bed, but from my dreams. The whispers had vanished, replaced by a profound silence that felt both eerie and comforting. For the first time in years, I slept through the night without fear. Weeks passed, and life returned to some semblance of normal. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that the mirror had left its mark on me. My reflection in the mirror seemed sharper, as though I carried a piece of that otherworldly realm with me. At times I thought I caught a flicker of movement in my peripheral vision, but when I turned, there was nothing there. One night, while cleaning my room, I found a scrap of parchment that had fallen from my book bag months ago. The drawing of the mirror stared back at me. The strange symbols glowed faintly. I traced my fingers over the lines, a chill running through me. And then I noticed something new. A single word, scrawled at the bottom of the parchment in spidery writing. "Beware." My pulse quickened as I realized the fight wasn't over. The mirror was gone, but the shadows would never truly let me go. And that, dear listeners, is where the story ends. Eleanor's battle with the mirror and the shadows that lurk beyond it may seem to have come to a close for now, but you must understand, some mirrors, once broken, or once you step inside, can never truly be mended or closed. The darkness they release never fully retreats. It lingers in the spaces between moments, waiting. As you drift off tonight, nestled in the warmth and safety of your bed, be aware of what you might see in the quiet corners of your room, or the quiet corners of your mind. For dreams, dear friends, are not always the escape they seem. And should you hear whispers, soft and almost imperceptible, calling your name from somewhere far, far away, perhaps, just perhaps, it's best not to respond, for some calls are not meant to be answered. Thank you for choosing to join me tonight. This has been Thorn Bloodrose, your humble guide through the endless corridors of the Unknown Chronicles. Stay tuned for our next descent into the abyss, where more chilling tale awaits, each darker and more twisted than the last. But remember, the shadows are always closer than you think. You may not always see them, but they are waiting and watching. So as you lay your head to rest tonight, keep your eyes open and your wits even sharper, because sometimes the nightmares don't begin when you close your eyes, and they begin when you awaken. And one final thing, my dear listeners, beware of the reflections that stare back at you. They may appear to be nothing more than the faintest echo of your own image, but the truth is far darker. For every reflection you see, there is a piece of you that it mirrors, and some reflections are not content to merely watch. They wait, silently, with their own desires, ready to step into your world when you're not looking. Good night, dear listeners, and sleep tight, if you can.